This episode of Scott Bromley's Internet Rabbit Hole is brought to you by Loot Crate. I know this is gonna sound crazy, but by a weird set of connections, Superman led to the creation of the ESRB. It's Internet Rabbit Hole time! So last night, I sat down to write an episode about Superman 64 and how terrible it is until I realized that that horse has already been beaten to death by anyone with a gaming vlog. So instead, I started looking up old Superman video games, all 23 of them, which led me to the very first Superman video game, Superman for the Atari 2600, published in 1978. But while doing a Google search for Superman Atari to find out more information, I saw a related search for Superman Atari Pinball. And of course, me being a huge pinball junkie, I clicked on that link instead, where I learned that much like the 2600 game, Superman Pinball was also made by Atari in 1978, but wasn't released until 1979. And according to the Internet Pinball Database, that game was designed by a guy named Steve Ritchie and programmed by Eugene Jarvis. So then I went to Steve Ritchie's Wikipedia page and was pointed towards an episode of Music Life Radio from 2012, where Steve Ritchie explained that after Superman, he left Atari for Williams Pinball, and eventually he took Eugene Jarvis with him. And together, they made a game called Firepower, which basically changed pinball forever by introducing multi-ball and lane changes. And if you guys don't know what a lane change is, when you're playing pinball, you know those little lights up there, up the very top, and you can move them around with the flippers? That's a lane change. That wasn't introduced until Firepower. But here's where it gets interesting. Now, while making Firepower, both Ritchie and Jarvis came up with the idea for Defender, which would later go on to become one of the most popular arcade games of all time. It even got name dropped in the Beastie Boys' Body Movin', and there was a track called Doing the Defender on that album right there, Pac-Man Fever by Buckner and Garcia. Anyway, according to his Wikipedia page, thanks to the success of Defender, Eugene Jarvis set out on his own and started a company called VidKids, which would later go on to create the game Robotron 2084, which was one of the first games to ever use dual stick controls, like almost every single game we play now, in 1982. Now I know what you're thinking, what does all this have to do with the creation of the ESRB? Hold on a minute, I'm getting there. So all throughout the 80s, while Jarvis was making video games, Ritchie was making classic pinball machines like Black Knight, High Speed, and Black Knight 2000, which has quite possibly the best music ever in an arcade game, which I think if my editor is doing his Yeah, my editor's doing his job. Right now, you're hearing the Black Knight 2000 music. Yeah.
You got the power. You got the might.
No way.
Get ready for battle.
Give me your money.
Beat the Black Knight.
Anyway, as it turns out, Black Knight 2000 credits software, effects, and magic to Ed Boon, who would later do all of the voices for Eugene Jarvis's game Total Carnage, the quasi-sequel to his other game Smash TV, which featured the same exact voice clip from Black Knight 2000, which just so happens to be the voice of Steve Ritchie, but I'll get back to that in a second. Now, before Smash TV, Eugene Jarvis created Narc, which up until that point was one of the bloodiest and most violent video games of all time. Seriously, the game was about narcotic officers roaming the streets of LA, blowing up heroin junkies with rocket launchers. Can you imagine that happening in real life?
Hey man, how's it going?
Put the motherfucking needle down, scumbag!
Oh, the needle? No, that's for my diabetes.
Don't you sass back, motherfucker!
What the fuck?
Diabetes!
Oh, Wilford Brimley!
However, before Narc, Eugene Jarvis, Steve Ritchie, and Ed Boon all worked together on a pinball machine which I just so happen to have in my home, called F-14 Tomcat in 1987. And Ed Boon himself would later go on to create Mortal Kombat with John Tobias, which according to Wikipedia, internally was just called Mortal until Steve Ritchie added Combat to the title. And partially because of Mortal Kombat and Narc's ultra-violence, the Video Game Rating Council was created by Sega in 1993, which was later dropped in favor for the industry-wide Entertainment Software Rating Board in 1994. But I'm not done yet. You know how earlier I was talking about Steve Ritchie's Black Knight 2000 voice work? Well, some of you guys might have thought his sounded a little familiar. Well, it should, because I found this YouTube video which shows you that Steve Ritchie is the voice of Shao Kahn in the Mortal Kombat series.
Flawless victory.
Developed by Midway, the same company that produced Cruisin' USA, which was designed by Eugene Jarvis, and its spin-off game, California Speed, which was designed by Steve Ritchie, who first worked together at Atari in the 1970s making pinball machines. And there you have it. By a strange sequence of events, 3 guys worked together to not only change pinball, but video games as we know it. Also, if you want to try out some Ritchie Jarvis Boone games for yourself, I highly recommend you download the Pinball Arcade on iOS, Android, Steam, PS3, PS4. Really, go download it. It's totally worth it. It's awesome. Trust me, it's great. But before I go, I wanted to ask you guys for suggestions. Just give me any 2 topics that you want me to link together. Just don't write stupid shit. I know asking YouTube down there to write, thoughtful, engaging content and not stupid shit is like me begging to be handsome, but I can dream, right? Right? Oh, and if you guys got lost once again, I drew you a handy little map, which is a window into my crazy rat's nest of a brain. Here we go. I'm gonna pause it. 3, 2, 1, pause. Well, that's all the time I had for you this week. I hope you guys enjoyed yourself, and if you did, why don't you like the video and share it with your friends? And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Until next time, I'm Scott Bromley saying don't delete your internet history. You haven't learned that I'm not done after I say that line yet, have you? Good, because I still want to talk to you about Superman. Specifically, this pop vinyl Superman figure, which was part of last month's Loot Crate. Don't know what Loot Crate is? Well, buckle up, Mary, I'm gonna tell you what it is. Loot Crate is an awesome service that delivers a theme box of geeky pop culture goodies to your doorstep every month for just $20. Sign up today and help Rev3 Games along the way by going to lootcrate.com/Rev3Games.
Quick. What do me and Wilford Brimley have in common? Diabetes! And our love of oatmeal.